Hi.
So good to meet you.
So good to meet you too. Hi.
Finally.
I know.
Welcome to Chanel Connects. I'm Yana Peel, President of Arts, Culture and Heritage at the House. For Season 5, we journey to La Pausa, Gabrielle Chanel's villa on the French Riviera, to hear artists and innovators discuss the future of creativity and the innate curiosity that powers their work. This time, American expats in France connect. Here are writer Lauren Collins and artist duo Gerard and Kelly in the cloisters of La Pausa.
So we are Gerard and Kelly, and we are artists who are also from America, but now based in Paris. And I'm Brennan Gerard.
And I'm Ryan Kelly.
Yeah, Ryan Kelly.
Hi, Brennan Gerard and Ryan Kelly. I'm Lauren Collins. It is so nice to meet you all after delving into your work. I have so many things I want to ask you. I feel like there are so many points in common, but so many not in common also that are going to be fun to discuss. So I'm happy to be here with you all at La Pausa.
Well, we're very excited to meet you. And it's so funny because I feel like we should have already met in so many different ways. And we've been following your work and reading your work. Actually, we remember that there was an article that you wrote several years ago about Tina Segal, whose work was very important to our work, especially when we were starting.
We have got to talk about the Kiss solo, your kind of reinterpretation, perhaps rebuttal of Tina Segal's work, The Kiss.
Because
you found that.
Yeah, I am just so curious to learn how you came up with that. Actually, do you want to get into it?
Sure. I actually think, The Kiss is a good place to start because I think one of the correspondences in our work is relationships and intimacy. Kiss Solo was a video, or is a video installation.
Multi-channel video installation,
right. And it is actually related to a performance that we made first called Reusable Parts, Endless Love. And the two works are both responsive to Segal's Kiss, which we encountered at the Guggenheim Museum in 2010. And we were challenged by it in many ways. Like Tino, our background is in dance before we studied visual art, film. And I think we saw that there was this choreographic aspect to the work. Of course, we were challenged by the persistent male-female relationships.
Well, that was what I was going to ask. I mean, was it an important moment because it was a blow-your-mind moment? Or was it an important moment because it was a we want to have our say?
I think it was a bit we want to have our say. And over time, and we've met Tino over the years, and really funny story about when he saw our Kiss solo project. He said, well, yours has a lot more ass slaps in it.
That's what we're looking for.
Like, all right,
the old ass slap meter.
But I would say at that moment it was like the challenge of like, no, we want to address these issues, but from a different point of view.
Right.
And so what we did, because we were not permitted to photograph or video record the Kiss as it was taking place in the rotunda of the Guggenheim.
Like one of the stipulations of Tina Segal's art, right?
Yes, especially then.
So we made audio recordings in our cell phones.
That's, undercover reporting.
It was undercover reporting.
It was.
Get in there. But so you got the goods.
We got the goods.
Yeah.
We deciphered through that process that it was a 12-minute choreography repeated on a loop. And so it was, it was a description of a kiss, his right hand on her left shoulder as he leans in to kiss her. They descend to the floor. I mean, it was a bit like sportscasting.
Right.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what we would do with it. But then it became the germ of our own performance and then a video installation where individuals of different genders would perform a kiss solo, where they had to do both the male and female parts on their own bodies.
Yeah. So we kind of became, even though maybe the first impulse was the recognition that it was only a male and female couple.
So you saw that and that pissed you off, basically.
Yeah. It was also like, how?
Or just like you felt it was like,
Yeah, I think we were a little
putting
pissed
words
off.
in your mouth, but just like a failure of imagination in a way?
Absolutely, a failure of imagination. Yeah. And then...
but maybe that's always how art moves forward, is in the blind spots.
How did it go over?
I think it was, how did it go over?
I think that the first response was
right
on and like more kind of replacing one form of representation with another. But then we started to realize that we were kind of more interested in how representations of intimacy are reproduced and circulated, and how those representations tend to find a model, right? Which might be called like normative. And it doesn't even matter what the genders are, right? Of the two.
Right.
But there is this idea of romance that has been so constructed. And we were thinking about how, when we became a solo, it was about that kind of idea of the intimacy with one's self.
This is something, okay, I'm like, sorry for the swerve, but I've been dying to ask you this. As people who work with your bodies as well as your minds, because I only have one of those modalities, like, I had this real hang up about the physical aspects of speaking French. Like, molding my lips in a certain way. Yeah, but because to me, I'm not trained in that. To me, it felt like almost like putting on a mask, or is this a certain form of hypocrisy, like having to like morph not only my, not only what's going on inside my body, but my entire presentation to something that maybe I'm not. But what's it like for someone who feels who feels a license to perform?
In the process of the translation or performing this new language, for me there was a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah.
And I think it's also that freedom of almost escaping your origins.
Yeah.
And that is the side of movement and migration, the more positive side, right?
Right.
The kind of new freedom that one can find by being within a strange language in a strange place. And I think that is something that we really tapped into when we were working on Eileen Gray's work. And, she's an Irish woman who moved here to France, who built a house actually very close to where we are now. You can almost see it from the end of the garden. She was one of the major architects of the 20th century. For a while, she was completely forgotten. And now there has, for the past, few decades, there's been a resurgence and an interest in her work. And we're discovering just how radical she was.
She's mostly known as a furniture maker.
Right.
But I know the lights.
The lights.
Chair.
And the chair.
Yeah. Right.
But she always was kind of, that being a stranger is also about becoming more free.
Yeah. I mean, that's something the three of us, if I'm extrapolating correctly from your bios, the three of us have in common hardcore provincials.
North Carolina.
Wilmington, North Carolina.
South Carolina. Ohio, Pennsylvania.
But it's different from someone, from growing up in New York City.
Totally.
Did you consciously want to reinvent yourself? I
don't know if it was entirely...
Yes.
Oh, Ryan.
The simple answer.
My first encounter with culture was when I was 11, and my parents drove myself and my two younger sisters to New York to see Cats.
Hell yeah.
And
the Gateway musical. No, but really, it's like you do something like that and it opens a whole universe.
I remember driving back on Interstate 80 heading west, and I'm looking out the back of the car at the disappearing city, tears in my eyes, and I was like, no, I'm going there. So that was a very clear decision to get out and reinvent myself. And, there's a lot of correspondence to both Eileen Gray and Chanel in this respect, I think. This kind of self-fashioning. So it's interesting, you say, did you learn French by kind of imitating the physicality and gestures of the French? I'm like, I think I learned New York that way.
Oh, that's so funny. You're right. Well,
I also had to change my language and how I spoke. So did you guys.
Right. There's definitely like a code switching.
Code
and then when you go
switching,
back, are you able to slip easily back into...
Easier than I might wish to.
Yeah. I was reading Vivian Gornick's memoir,
Yes.
Fierce Attachments, which I love
Yes.
so much about her.
I was just thinking about her. That's so funny.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
About her upbringing in the Bronx and how her mother just, scraped and scrabbled and put her everything into sending her daughter, to making it so that her daughter could get an education. And then once she did, she was outraged.
Yeah.
How dare you speak these words that I don't
Yes.
understand?
Yeah.
Which is, there's that freedom, but then there's also the worry
Absolutely.
that you're alienating yourself from who you are or
Yes.
from what made you, or it's a fine,
It
it's
is
a fine balance.
It is a very fine balance. I mean, because we're touching on like the link between translation, repatriation, which is what we're doing. I don't think I'm going back, right?
Yeah.
And the class transfuge, like the kind of
Right.
that.
Don't you love the phrase in French, the social escalator?
Yeah.
Or isn't that?
Yes.
And the class transfuge. Yeah.
Yeah, and that I think that these are very pertinent topics right now, and they're definitely structured our life. I don't know if you've read A Woman in the City. Is it called Woman in the City? It's her
Yeah, I
latest
haven't
one.
because
You just read the Fierce
I'm on a
Attachments.
Vivian Gornick jag, and that's next.
That's great.
So tell me what I have a little.
Well, this is about being a single in the city. And I think that this state of freedom that one could have in the solitude is something that Eileen Gray knew a lot about. And our kind of speculative, the film is a speculative fiction, right? And we're trying to imagine what her last day and night was in the house, right? Which is really so funny because it's right just down there. And I think that one of the things that she was dealing with was attachments to place, but also to other people, like entanglement.
Right.
And then the decision to be alone, to be single, is this continual difficult practice, right? But there is great freedom in that.
Well, there was such a sense, watching the film, the sense of trespass spoke to me so much. It felt like she had her, the Wolfian ideal.
Yeah.
She had created that for herself, a room of one's own. And not only a room, but a perfect, villa with her witty stencils and everything, a place for everything and everything in its place. And the way she was dressed, and you sensed order and contentment in her life. And then everybody, comes in and takes her space in a way. And then because the film was so interesting and because you stoked my curiosity about Eileen Gray, whom I didn't know very much about, then I got to reading about Le Corbusier and the murals and the afterlife of the house. And I loved the way that you were able to give a premonition of the trespasses that would happen later.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
But this also gets back to the nature of home itself. And I think that we have this idea that like home is a kind of removed from the world, but you have to, it's actually more, I think more we have to think about what is the boundary between the world and the home. So but I think that she was really consciously trying to build a home, and then there was a trespass. So that boundary, she had not yet figured out that boundary yet, I think.
But so what does it mean to you? Are you kind of going with like the hermit crab model where your home is where, I think you can also find a home, like language can be a home. It can be a place as much as a nation state or as much as, it's interesting to think about expanding or, expanding the notion of home. Where do you feel at home, or where do you make your home?
I think the search. This film is the most recent chapter. We call them chapters. Very linguistic, I guess. In a long kind of study of different, mostly modernist homes, and we're usually looking at the relationship that was kind of obscured, or set of relationships that might have been obscured, and maybe even was the impetus for the design. So a home like Eileen Gray's or Le Corbusier's Cité Radieuse, where we worked before, the Schindler House in Los Angeles. Like these sites are often narrated for their formal invention, but that's rarely why they were built.
Because that's not it's not how you go out in public and talk about your art too, right? It was so interesting to know the intimate and the emotional backstory. Behind.
Yeah. I mean, like you look
you're trying to get into that, which is
definitely. And that is, I think it's also it's our own emotional backstory that drove us in our work to investigate.
Totally. I think
the architecture. I mean, we were doing this work, like the Kiss Solo, around the couple, in part because it was the moment when we were kind of reflecting on, I think we went to art school and realized we were the only duo there. And it was like weird. And it was,
Did you think there were going to be a lot of duos?
Yeah, I mean, we just...
Maybe a trio?
Exactly. I think it had just become natural for us, right?
Yeah.
How did you start working together?
We met at a...
we met in New York.
We met in New York.
At a party, as happens, and immediately within 3 months, made a performance together. And because we had no resources, we moved in together immediately following that. And I think we thought, I mean, we were a couple, we were a romantic couple and living together, but I'd say our primary activity, because every couple needs an activity, was making art. And if we hadn't been 20 years old, I think...
better than whittling.
we might have understood that from the jump, the nature of this intimacy was about co-creation and not necessarily cohabitation or the co-creation of domestic space.
Right.
We were there to make art together, but it took us 10 years to figure it out.
So having this history together, these different frequencies on which you either do or have known each other, where do you find solitude? I'm fascinated by that because for me, my process of creating is like locking myself alone in a room for hours on end. But the older I get, it's funny because I've started really craving collaboration.
I think now you're getting to the question of architecture because we went to graduate school, we discovered we were a duo. That it was a unique thing, you know?
Yeah.
We did this series of works around the romantic couple because we knew we were not a romantic couple, but we understood there was something very important and significant.
We felt like we needed to study it in our work. Like, what is intimacy?
Right.
You know, what is a couple?
And that led us to, leaving school, returning to New York, moving back into the apartment we had lived in as a couple.
Is that a work of art? Because it should be. Is it just give it a title and call it a day?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And needing to kind of adaptive reuse our, tenement apartment in Bushwick, now as a kind of uncoupled couple. And it was the recognition of how impossible that architecture was, how resistant it was to our desire to live in a different way than a romantic couple that led us to modern living, to this project of investigating modernist domestic spaces.
So just to make like a language analogy, you found that architecture was a kind of grammar that was becoming too constricting?
Yeah.
Like you wanted to find new new forms of expression, or you wanted to know the rules so well that you could then break the rules, which is also what you can, of course, do with grammar and language.
Yes, I do think we felt very limited by the grammar we were working with to write the kind of ongoing story of our relationship. And as artists, of course, we are telling our own story always through...
Yeah, I call that embedded biography. If you're writing about something, that's not a real term, but I always think about it because I just finished a piece about, it's kind of the Algerian Nutella, and it's a hazelnut paste, and it went viral this summer, and then the EU banned it, and there was a whole polemic around it. But I thought it was kind of the perfect Trojan horse for writing about the Franco-Algerian relationship. And anyway, I got really into it, but the way I ended up writing it was totally also as a Trojan horse for my story. It was about, homeland and how immigrants relate to the place they came from and what happens when the place that you came from changes dramatically. And
well, I think also the way that it's also very interesting the way that autobiography appears in work, like I was
in
just our work, but also even where we are now, like how we're in this courtyard where it's modeled off a Cistercian abbey, which is also where, Gabrielle Chanel grew up. So the ways in which we're not always fully aware of the ways in which our autobiography, our most important subjective experiences, those things that shape our vision of the world, how they show up in our work and our decisions.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about how your early years, your unconscious and your everything that goes in, those early experiences are also something you can try to shake like an accent, but it's gonna come surging out. Even if you
totally
master another way of speaking, when you stub your toe or the other thing linguists say is like at the moment of orgasm, you're always gonna speak in your real voice.
Your mother tongue?
Yeah.
Your mother tongue.
Exactly.
Untangle that.
Yeah.
No, but it kind of goes back to this question of about travel and freedom, what we were talking about before, about this. It's a dialectic between the freedom to change, but also there's certain aspects of yourself as you continue to work, right? As an artist, as a writer, that you realize what you cannot change about yourself. And so it's this constant push and pull,
And yourselves when you're working together.
Yes.
Is it?
So I think this is why, because we are a collaborative, and we've been a collaborative for 23 years, so there's no solo practice outside of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're two individuals in a collaboration. So language is essential.
Is it easier to communicate in an artistic collaboration than a romantic one? Or what are the respective communication challenges?
Okay. I'm thinking about physicality now. I'm thinking about in a romantic collaboration or romantic partnership, you have a whole other language. We also have a physicality in our relationship, but I would say language and I feel that when we met, we started a conversation. I remember that conversation.
Literally, what was it? What did you start talking about?
We met at the Rainbow Room.
What a great period detail.
Yes. So the Rainbow Room is on the top floor of the Rockefeller Center, right? It's in the 40 Rock? Is it 30 Rock?
It was the restaurant that slowly spun around itself, right?
Yeah.
And
with the view onto Manhattan.
I think that might be an architecture that you need to revisit.
It's true. It was an
point.
architectural event. I was a ballet dancer at the time, and so customarily, kind of being invited to drinks, and then I decided I would just crash and stay for dinner.
Nice.
And I was told you can, but you've got to sit with the staff, which was Brennan, and he was telling me about you were working on a 1989 portfolio. It was an art auction, and so he's talking about Kiki Smith and Nan Golden, and my mind is blown because I knew nothing about art below 14th Street.
And you couldn't Google it under the table because it was 23 years ago.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I just remember how animated Brendan was, and Charles Ludlam.
I was
he knew so much about the avant-garde.
So I didn't really know that much about it, but I was
he knew extremely
passionate and extremely passionate about things that I had just discovered recently. But isn't that also part of a relationship, is that you discover something, you get passionate, you share it. Yeah. It's you don't actually become an expert on it. You're actually kind of you're just sharing a passion.
That's the best part. And particularly in a city, there's a whole kind of layer of discovery that goes with every relationship. Where does that person's restaurants? And then you break up and it's redacted on the map, places you just can't go anymore. I feel like everyone, if you live in a city long enough, particularly when you're young.
To go back to your question about is it harder? What is the artistic versus the romantic. And I think that one of the things that happens in a romantic relationship that we've learned too through the work is that you have all these codes. And in an artistic collaboration, there are no codes, right? There's really, like, there's codes in romance. Like, you can kind of draw upon, they help you at the beginning of the session. You know, there's all of the myths that we have
Just the kind
culturally.
the framework.
The framework. There's a framework for how this is supposed to go or can go, or there's a time.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
You know?
But then you stay in a romantic relationship long enough and the codes are also no longer helpful, right?
Exactly. And that is the point, I think, that got really interesting. I think that is a little bit kind of how so it was after 10 years into our relationship that we uncoupled. And there was something about that that was very interesting. But also that at that moment when the codes no longer work and you do have to invent something.
This is going to be, you guys are really touching something in me. This is going to be an earnest one, but that's kind of like the project of life.
Yeah,
too.
Absolutely.
I think there's something incredibly poignant about just knowing that you have gone through the passage of time with someone and that you've created a history. And like, to me, that there's a lot of weight to that in a romantic relationship. I mean, sometimes, you know, that can drag you down too, but I really connect with that.
Time can be a holy thing.
We've been talking about the notion of timeline in private life and intimate life, but I've been thinking, I've spent the last almost 10 years working on a book that's almost done about what began as a white supremacist massacre in my hometown of Wilmington, North Carolina, and is also thought to be the only successful coup d'etat on American soil because the white men, the white aristocrats of the town, went out, they murdered black men in the streets, and then they marched to the city hall and they overthrew the municipal government.
Wow.
And this happened in 1898, and it's usually told as a story that begins in 1896 with an election, and that at the outer limit ends in 1900 with the state legislature passing a grandfather clause disenfranchising black men. And the whole project of the book is to expand and blow out the timeline of that story and look at the long-term consequences, you know, into the present moment, into the consequences for people who are living today. Both families, it's a multi-generational story in the way I tell it, but it's a political story too. And so anyway, I think it's incredibly important to think about moving the goalposts and the parameters of history, because how you interpret history depends on where you think it begins and ends.
Totally. Wow, it sounds really powerful. And this happened in your hometown where you grew up?
In Wilmington, North Carolina. Yeah.
And is it a foundational myth kind of your place, or did you have
No,
to...
it was kind of, you know, hushed up for a long time. And of course, there were people who knew about it because they had suffered or survived, or because their ancestors had been perpetrators. There were people who knew, but there weren't people who talked about it in public for quite a long time. That's changing. But no, it wasn't a foundational myth at all. It was a taboo.
Reminded us. It reminded me, I'm not in your head, of part of the reason why we made our film, E for Eileen, at Eileen Gray's house, was because we were told a story that we knew was not historically correct. And we didn't have a lot of the resources because a lot of the archival material is not there, and plus we're not historians.
You like smelled a rat.
We did. And
just from the start.
From the start. So we realized we needed to turn to fiction and to art in order to, I would just say, we're not trying to tell the story, but to like what you're saying, like open up history.
Absolutely. And in a way watching, I so envied you the freedom, the liberties that you were able to take. And I don't think they were emotional liberties, is what's interesting. I mean, you can sometimes get at a greater emotional or spiritual truth through fiction. I feel like we've talked so much about history and time. What about the future? Like, what are we doing now and what are we doing next?
Aren't we moving in here?
Oh, yeah.
No.
I already called my room.
This film, E for Eileen, was the third in a series of short films that we shot in France since moving here. So we have a short film that we're shooting this year imminently, moving out of the kind of iconic modernist architecture into a more vernacular architecture. We're shooting in an abandoned 80s Italian disco, but still super, of course, invested in our questions of kind of lost histories, lost causes, as Brennan likes to call them. We're thinking about the AIDS epidemic. We're thinking about what that means today. And of course, always coming back to our own kind of historical position. So we're working on that. And meanwhile, we're starting the very beginning development of a long form film.
Yes.
So,
that's exciting. I'm going to be there. I'll be there with my salty popcorn.
Yeah.
As soon the day you say the word. It's funny. I mean, I'm really grappling. So I've been working on this book for almost a decade. It's a departure from my first book, but it's also very personal to me. And, it's also a time... It's a time where journalists are feeling extremely embattled, and challenging ourselves and thinking like, what is the best way to combat this? Mm-hmm. We've been brought up that we're not advocates, but I think we have to.
I see what you mean.
We have to find ways. It's like, what do I want to focus on in the coming years?
Yeah.
How am I going to bring my skills to bear on what's happening in the world? So that, for me, is like the biggest question. I
really understand that. Really do. And I think what I'm noticing, it's so interesting, like this historical turn, this interest and investment in your work, in our work, in history, has become a kind of political determination.
And
it's like there are people who are invested in history, and then there are those who are not. And that, without history, we're in a kind of oblivion.
I see a connection on just a kind of maybe perhaps structural way with architecture. There's a lot of architects right now, new architecture, which is thinking a lot about, before just building a new building, renovation, which is also interesting because it's what's happening here.
Right.
So they're even in the most contemporary forms of architecture, there's this idea of reuse, So there's now this idea that maybe it's not always about building new things, but using our technologies and using our approaches to reshape the past, or from these kind of traces of the past, to build new futures.
No, but it's interesting because, like, in Isabel Wilkerson's book about caste, Caste is the book, she compares, America to an old house, and caste is the foundation of the house. So there are also ways, replacing the foundation, tearing that out and finding something new. But it doesn't mean that, this old house that is, or this relatively old house that is America, right? We have to find ways to live in it.
Yeah, totally.
It was so good to finally meet you, Lauren, after reading your work.
But there's
so many years.
I have maybe this is just the journalist in me, but I have 100 more questions I want to ask you. So we're gonna have to do off the mic
part 2
in Paris.
Good thing we all live in the same city.
Yeah.
This is Chanel Connects, available to listen on Spotify, YouTube Music, and Apple Podcasts. Next time, artist Matthew Lutz-Kinoy connects with chef Mauro Colagreco.